Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, dear speakers and participants. We're glad to welcome you to live discussion, Latvia as a new home for global FinTech. The development of regulatory environment and facilitation to innovations in the financial sector is one of our priorities among supervision functions. In the beginning of this year, FCMC started a series of live events to facilitate the dialogue between the regulator and FinTechs. This event is organized by Financial Capital Market Commission and industry partners, Association of Latvian Payment and Electronic Money Service Providers, and Venture Faculty House of FinTech. This event, we will demonstrating our openness, willingness to help and support companies and be part of the development of the FinTech ecosystem. The interest is proven by the large number of participants, excellent European and Latvian speakers. Latvian FinTech entrepreneurs continue to play an important role in European FinTech and financial sector. Many of them do business based on UK, Lithuanian, Estonian, or other non-Latvian licensing regulations with operation back office based here in Riga. However, currently, Latvian business environment and licensing opportunities are welcome to be locally incorporated. This event, we are going to discuss with industry experts the challenges of industry growth, focusing on two topics. First panel discussion is called Improvement of Latvian Ecosystem Creates Opportunities Being Located in Latvia. Discussion will be chaired by Daria Dubinina, CEO of Krasula. Second panel discussion, Challenges of Latvian Regulatory Regime, New Era of Latvian Financial Sector. Discussion will be chaired by me, Marina Krasovska, Director of Financial Innovation Department in Financial Capital Market Commission. Please be open and post your questions in the chat room during the discussion. FCMC has nominated a team of experts from licensing, FinTech supervision, and IML department who will answer your questions online. If we will not have enough time to answer all the questions online, we will publish the questions and answers after the webinar on our webpage. So with these words, I'm passing the microphones to Daria Dubinina, CEO of Krasula, who will moderate the first panel discussion. Daria, the floor is yours, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Marina. So I would like to start our panel discussion with MasterCard presentation because we have two guests today. The first one is Johan Madenius, Head of Banking Relationship at MasterCard, Nordics and Baltics, and Mats Tarlsson, Head of Innovation, FinTech and Impact Tech Engagement at MasterCard Nordics and Baltics. So I'm passing the microphone to you. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the kind invitation. We will, I, Johan Madenius, together with my dear colleague Mats Tarlsson, will just put some background to our discussion here and the panel discussion. So this is how we see payments, and this is not about MasterCard. This is about the ecosystem, payments. So there is a lot of changes in the payment industry, and we think there will be a shift that will redefine our future and our business and many other across the digital ecosystem. This is what our global CEO said a while ago, and I couldn't agree more with him. So MasterCard, many of you would probably say, that's a card scheme. But let me start saying, please forget about us as a card scheme only. Yes, it's true. We have 3 billion card holders globally. That's quite a lot. We have 60 million merchants connected to this, and we do business through 22,000 banks. But that's what we built the first 50, 60 years of our history. The new economy is setting in many more triggering points here. You might have heard about Target and TIPS, the instant payments throughout Europe, EPI, European Payment Initiative, or even the P27 that we built for the Nordic banks, cross-country, cross-currency, instant payments. So we are building the infrastructure for it. The commerce is being more and more digital, as you know, and banking is reinvented, we usually say, with players like Revolut, Klarna, etc. And data is probably the new oil in this industry. But to make sure you do the best out of this, you also need to act cautiously, because data could end up in the wrong hands. And the last point, when it ends up in the wrong hands, it could lead to cybercrime. And we see a big increase in demand for fraud tools. So this is what we like to do. We like to use our capabilities when it comes to cards, account to account, blockchain, or whatever rail the transaction might go through. And we think we're quite well placed here. But for the discussion today, as you see here, we would like to enable everyone, people, business, governments, to do payments through different channels, through different rails. You see card network, account to account, open banking, and blockchain. And if you look at this page, and this is the requirements for today when it comes to payments, you will easily understand that no one can do this by themselves. Not even us, even if we're a global company operating in over 200 countries, etc. But we are dependent on our partners. We always were, and we always will. And a lot of new partners must enter into this, and is entering into this ecosystem today. And you can call them FinTech, you can call them whatever you want, but we need help. And that's how we thought about this coming around. And I would say, like a lot of good ideas, the way we work with FinTechs started with a cup of coffee back in 2010. And Mats, why don't you tell us what we do at Mastercard since then throughout the Nordics and Baltics?
Absolutely. Thanks, Johan. So as Johan says, we need partners. And with this cup of coffee, with two gentlemen from iSettle with an idea, we realized that it's so lot of innovative power here in the Nordic and Baltics, and we need to be out there supporting these great ideas, looking for partnership, etc. And the rest is history when it comes to iSettle. It was a great initiative by these two gentlemen. Yeah. So that led to that we created something we call the Lighthouse Finitive, that stands for Financial Initiatives. And here's where we scan the market, looking for companies, promising FinTechs with the promising partnership capabilities. And that we did in 2018. In 2019, we brought Toconomy in, and we realized that Toconomy is more in what we call the social impact, financial impact, and sustainability area. And then we created a second program we called the Massive, Make and Scale Social Initiative Vision. So this is the program for engagement in the Nordic and Baltic we are running currently. And I think we have a next slide, Johan. And as we say, the Massive is really focusing on the UN Sustainability Development Goals. To find these kind of companies that, and we have a target to try to help 1 billion people by 2025 in that segment. And on the Finitive side, we are looking more on the traditional payments, but as Johan also said, we are not only a card payment company, we are a multi-rail, looking at blockchain, account-to-account payments, open banking, etc. So this is the way we support the ecosystem of FinTechs, also in Latvia. So let's get started, Johan. What do you say?
Yeah, together. That's right. All from us.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, Mats. That was a great presentation. I think it's broadened the comprehension of MasterCard for everyone. I would like to remind you that you're welcome to send your questions, and we will be getting back to the questions after the panel discussion. So if you have any questions to this presentation as well, we will have time to cover that as well. Okay, and moving up next, we're moving to the discussion panel. So I would like to once again introduce the panelists. So we have Marina Krasovska, who is the Director of Financial Innovations Department and at Latvian Financial and Capital Markets Commission. We have Rinat Lokomet, who is a strategical partner at Venture Faculty. We have Andrei Bosko, the board member at the Association of Latvian Payment and Electronic Money Service Providers. We have Gunturs Gudurmanis, a member of the board at Paysero Latvia. And of course, we have Mats Stadelsson, a head of innovation, fintech, and impact tech engagement at MasterCard Nordics and Baltics, and Johan Amadenios, head of banking relationship at MasterCard Nordics and Baltics. So welcome, everyone. The first question I would like to ask you would be about Latvia as a place for building fintech businesses. And Andrei, how do you think, what are the main competitive advantages of Latvia in comparison to neighboring countries and in general?
Hello, everybody. If you speak about Latvian competitive advantage, so first of all, it's important to mention that Latvia has a strong fintech community, historically. And right now, a lot of fintech entrepreneurs are acting in fintech companies, and these companies, some of these companies are licensed and based, headquarters are based somewhere abroad. Yes, that is what we will change definitely. Yes, because it's quite important also to understand to all of the market participants that this approach to regulatory arbitrage, let's say like this, yes, it will be, there is already trends in European Union against this approach, and everybody, like, this idea is that everybody should based on their like home country. It's quite logical, and also for entrepreneur, it's also maybe much more comfortable to be in their homeland, So that is a clear message, and we see the trends in other countries who benefited from this regulation arbitrage. Their approach towards regulation became more strict. They are asking for more presence in their countries. You have to deal with local market and so on. And this is what has changed. And at the same time, Latvia has right now this. Last year it was amazing because of we see a lot of good signs from a regulatory body. Yes, they are quite open. They dramatically change their approach towards fintech. Yeah, and right now fintech is a focus for them. Like not only banking service but also fintech. So that means that their approach towards regulation supervision will be more adapted to fintech needs. That is clear, and we see that they are more open. They provide more consultancy, and you are able, even if you are not licensed here, you are able to reach FCMC professional and to get some consultation for free, just to understand how you should to change your business model and to be a licensed institution. It's really good opportunity, and of course,
yes, I agree with you. So I do believe that that Latvian ecosystem becomes more open. Mats, do you think what is the role of MasterCard in making Latvia more attractive?
Well, what we try to do, we try to support the Latvian fintech ecosystem to strengthen this. And one example of that is that we once a year scan the Latvian market for promising fintechs that is ready for partnership, ready to scale. And then we support and advise these companies and looking for partnership with MasterCard, with banks, or what we have also seen between the startups by creating this community. So that's the way we try to do it. through the Lighthouse Federative Program.
Thank you, Mats. Marina, what do you think Latvia should do better to compete in the global fintech market?
Well, so in there, if a question, it's quite global, I would say. I see that in order to compete, this problem should be solved in at least 4 dimensions to strengthen the financial fintech ecosystem. First of all, let's see how this ecosystem is developed and from which part it consists. And definitely there are 4 big parts. First of all, it's regulation. And we did a lot to put it in the right order to now. We have cleaned up a lot of stuff internally. We have did a lot of improvements. The second part, I would say it's important to have the access to equity for the new startups and for new fintech companies who are working in this environment and looking for the additional capital injection to increase the business. If we look right now, actually there are more venture capital funds, but there are no risk capital funds who are presented in a seed stage right now. This access to equity is quite limited. I would say we need to increase the participants in this area. The third one, I would say this is absolutely access to talent pool. The current demand in Latvia to cover the IT needs is about 16,000 people. It is something that we will cover only our existing activities. Same time, if we see how academia works, the academia releases less than 1,000 per year. So it's not enough skilled people. I think that the skills and IT skills and financial skills historically were quite strong in Latvia. However, we need to think in the future, if we want to develop this area and opportunity, we need to attract even more people from the outside and to create here the fantastic environment for working and to develop themselves. And of course, to review academia programs to increase budget places could be also one of the issues. If we will compare the bachelor programs in EU, they are more data-driven right now. They're more tech-driven. They are much more different kind of specialties working in artificial intelligence and other stuff. I think there is something that we can learn. And of course, the improvement of infrastructure around this fintechs. By infrastructure, we understand banking, payment infrastructure, RegTechs, who are also helping fintech to grow, and other facilities. So all these benefits together with changes in the startup law and some improvement in taxes could quite dramatically improve this country's competitiveness. And of course, the main leadership from the governmental side and strong government position in this area is just only should be at the first place. By the way, shortly, Latvia will have own fintech strategy, national fintech strategy, and financial ministry is currently working under these documents. So let's see, they should come up recently with some ideas.
That sounds very promising, Marina. Thank you. Okay, Gunters, as Paysera is the Lithuanian company that has expanded to Latvia, and from your perspective, what do you think the main advantage is, and does it make sense to open a company in Latvia when it's originally registered in Lithuania?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I should admit that Paysera is not about to transfer its license from one country to other. This process is based on the strategy of Paysera, which covers, so Paysera is a network of licensed partners in different countries, in local countries. So, and all partners are using same infrastructure, but are operating in local countries. So this allows to better understand the local market, adapt local legislation. We see a lot of advantages by receiving a Latvian license. So basically, it could increase our credibility in local markets. It could help us to onboard more Latvian customers, and of course to develop most demand services on Latvia. So these are the main advantages we see to get the Latvian license.
Thank you for that. Rinat, as a person who has a huge experience in building businesses in different countries, how do you see a transition? What is missing in Latvia?
Good morning. So transition. So it's an interesting question because we have different events what happened in recently 5 years. So we have a transition of Latvian banking system. We have Brexit, and we have another events with significant influence on everything what happened here, generally in Latvia. And transition from the banking Latvia as the center of banking industry to Latvia as the center of financial technological industry. For sure it can happen, but we need to be open, and the regulator need to be now it's where we have very open regulator who's ready to communicate with the industry. But still, we need to show to the world the signals what companies are coming to here, opening, receiving the licensing, opening new companies and set up the headquarters here. It's I think it will happen very soon. In 2022, I hope to see a huge amount of companies who are coming to Latvia and transferring their businesses, for example, from UK. When we see that hundreds of companies are now looking for the possibility to be located in the European market, and for sure Latvia it's a very interesting place to be. So the openness of regulator is the first issue. Second issue is the support infrastructure and support of Latvian banking system, because each fintech player wants to have the good comfort infrastructure to make the payments, different kind of payment by schemes, Visa, MasterCard, or SEPA payments, or payments related to the SWIFT. So, and only now the Latvian banks starting to propose with some kind of banking as a service, and it will have a huge impact. Then it will come to place in reality what the fintech companies can have this possibility to work with Latvian banks as an infrastructure platform.
Okay, thank you. And also, since you've touched the banking infrastructure, how do you think how is important the current banking infrastructure for the development of fintech companies, and what else has to be added in order for the banking infrastructure to be attractable for the fintechs to build something on top of it?
So as we know, the fintech is two words: financial, technology. So, and the third word was missing here, so it's infrastructure, because without infrastructure, you will not go forward. And we had a good example of Lithuania, and where Lithuania Central Bank opened with SEPA payments for a lot of electronic money institutions. And I know with some discussion with Central Bank of Latvia, what they trying to propose some opportunities, but still it's not in place. But some local banks are already providing this kind of 2 layers SEPA solutions. But for sure, the openness of banks and will to work with fintech, with different kind of risks, what can be management, but still it will have a huge. Then Latvia will be more interesting to the fintech players from Europe or from global.
Yes, thank you, Rinat, for that. So then we're continuing with the banking. Marina, which trends do you see in the cooperation of banks, fintechs, and regulator, and what future do you see here?
Well, as a regulatory, we are quite open to banks and fintechs when they are thinking regarding the new technologies and collaboration. And of course, on an everyday basis, we are consulting in Innovation Hub fintech companies. And in order to facilitate those fintech inclusion into financial sector, we also established a regulatory sandbox that is quite a good instrument. So for now, we see some small samples of banking and fintech collaboration that we can mention. For example, Norgedin, the fintech company who are quite actively working in using the opportunities of PSD2 and open banking regulation. And another samples of collaboration of fintechs and banking, we see usage of RegTech services. For example, for onboarding of new customers and use customer verification services for outside the banking. However, I must admit that we want to see more collaboration as it has been done, for example, in UK. And of course, some sample I can mention on European level when like Atom Bank is cooperating with LendBay, who is providing funding for real estate buy-to-let platform, or P2P lending platform Zopa is involved in car finance and purchasing products with Dexo Bank customers. So they have more collaborated and more inclusion in the financial sector. And Starling, for example, also revealed that they have a significant funding for small companies, what is done from the funding cycle, that is P2P lending platform. And that is a kind of partnership created between banks and fintech. Of course, we want to see more collaboration on that side. And what we see, we want to see that such partnership would definitely could increase the competition. It gives more high quality product, and it will give also the access to finance for SME companies. For example, what we see now, some SME companies still are outside the banking sector, especially if you do not have a collateral or you are a high-risk customer, but still you need to get the access for them. So in the future, we would like to see the more collaborative, large collaboration, not only on IT side, but also the product inclusion. Of course, we will be managed and look what kind of risk it will be bring on the table. However, the more inclusion the financial system will absorb in those fintechs inside, the more competitive as a country and as a sector we will be in the future.
Thank you, Marina. I believe that each and every fintech founder is happy to hear that, because we are all looking forward to more open to regulation in Latvia and more opportunities for here to come. Okay, Gunters, in your experience, what is the Latvian banking system players' attitude towards cooperation with fintech players? What could be improved?
Thank you. I think Latvian banks are still very worried about cooperation with fintech companies. Actually, perhaps only one bank who we know that clearly declares that its priority is cooperation with fintech industry in Latvia. So of course I can understand banks because of the risk management and et cetera. But for example, if a financial institution wants to participate in SEPA transfers and then it can't join to system of Latvian central bank. Financial institution has to find a partner bank in Latvia. So in Lithuania, as somebody already mentioned, Lithuania it's totally different, and which makes Lithuania more attractive for fintechs. But it's hard to say what exactly should be done. But so I guess one of the most important is just to from government institutions and the Commission is to send a clear message that yes, there was a tough time. Our financial system was repaired. Now we are confident, it's strong, and we are welcome for new opportunities for fintechs. And then this message should be heard by both local banks, Latvian banks, and global business.
Thank you, Gunters. Andrei, how would you evaluate the current state of cooperation of banks, especially with payment companies and fintechs overall?
Yeah, maybe with overall with fintechs, the situation is better. Like Marina mentioned, yeah, that there is some kind of collaboration with RegTech and fintech and so on. But regarding payment service providers, the situation not so good, not so great. So it's because of part of local banks. Large banks are quite conservative towards cooperation with payment service providers. Yes, it's like a consequences after banking sector this reputational crisis what we have several years ago here, and there will also push from regulatory body. They warned a lot about risk regarding cooperation with payment service provider and electronic money institutions. So and then banks were scared a little bit of how to manage the risk. We don't know really how to manage them, how to deal with them, with payment service providers. Yeah, but right now its situation is a little bit better because there is some local banks who are really targeted these payment service provider as a focus for servicing. They provide this servicing, and I believe that with time we will see that also these big banks also will be more friendly towards this cooperation because of maybe explanation and work together with regulator and banking association regarding describing a rule how to manage a risk, what is a risky payment service provider, and what is service provider, what kind of service provider doesn't rise your risk so much. Right now there is conservative approach towards all payment service providers, without exception. So and I believe with time it will change also, because it's a little bit overreaction of the higher risk,
I hope so. Thank you, Andrei. Johan, do you think banks are okay, or are they just outdated institutions that have to be replaced with platforms, digital solutions, or blockchain maybe?
My simple answer on that would be no. I don't think they are outdated. I think they are a part of the ecosystem. Some might struggle a bit with how to position themselves in this and how to cooperate. But we get a lot of new questions from them about this ecosystem and how to collaborate. So I think collaboration is the only way forward, and more of the banks are realizing that. So I think we will see a big shift here.
Thank you for that, Johan. Mats, from your experience, are the Latvian banks innovative enough, and what's the space for improvement?
Well, I would say what I see is that's a lot of innovation, ambitions, and power by the banks. I see now and then new innovative services being launched in the market. That's really, really good. But I think I need to echo previous speakers here. Maybe we should see a little bit more openness for partnership, collaboration, co-innovation. I think that would make the market much, much more innovative. Do it together, yeah. So that's, I think, it's missing.
Got it. Thank you. And now I would like to touch a little bit taxation. And I will start with Renat. How do you think, is a taxation regimen competitive enough? Are there key aspects to be improved so Latvia would be more attractive for the startups and for FinTechs?
So for taxation is a very delicate question, because always the taxation can be improved. But in case of Latvia, it's better not to touch it, just to keep it as it, but not to make the new reforms. Because as we see it now, the corporate taxation is very okay now. So the zero taxation for the holding companies or companies before the distribution of profit. It's very good. It's very competitive in Europe and worldwide. Where employment taxation, personal taxation, still need to have some place for improvement. And recently was analysis of comparison for taxation in Europe and Latvia, and I think Lithuania, they have a most higher rate of employment tax. But still, if it will be kept as it is, and the minimal salary will be increased, and no taxation of a minimal salary, so I think it will be pretty okay in comparison to the Scandinavian countries, to UK, etc. But as I said, no reforms. It will be okay. Let's keep it as it is. What is important is the taxation of the issue. What is now discussable in the government and in Europe, how to make taxation of remote workers, because they are working, for example, from Latvia in UK or from UK in Latvia, and who is taxable in this situation, and what will be tax rate. And we need to find a Latvian approach and also be compliant to the European approach, because then our people, our fintech experts or professionals can sit here, make the global business to be taxable also in Latvia. Also, we can attract people from worldwide, from the third countries to Europe. It's also very interesting because then the talents can come to Riga or to Latvia to work, or they can work from Latvian companies from abroad. If we have openness of it, it will be great because we have Ukraine has a lot of talents and fintech is growing there. We see third countries as Belarus, India, a lot of support services what is proposed there. And we know what the Latvian tax authorities is thinking about it, but still it's needed to be loudly said. What we need to have a very good taxation regime and for the remote taxation, remote work as well.
Thank you, Renat. Thank you. Marina, how regulators can influence the taxation regimen for fintech companies, in your opinion?
Well, it's quite a tricky question because we're not managing taxes. However, what I see and regarding the taxes, I had the relevant questions to fintechs. And does anyone already try to use what we have? It's a good point because what Renat today is mentioned that we have this attractive tax regime for startups. When we're investing the profit, the income tax is zero. Also, in Latvian startup ecosystem, several things have been changed. For example, Latvian startup ecosystem now improved this stock option regulation. Now the fintechs may give away the shares to employees in a much more convenient way. And that's how to attract those skilled talents and how to improve them and how to remain them on a company to create this additional value. Well, in addition to that, I would say that Latvian startup law now is more friendly by unique tax regime that also helps to attract, again, those same talented programmers, designers, coders, or tax skills by low costs fixing the social tax payments. So it means that regardless of salary amount paid, combined with the zero individual income rate, the 340 euro is your maximum tax rate payment for employee. So it means that if you are going onto the program and you are paying something like 2 minimal salaries for your employee, you will be able to pay taxes from one. So it creates this economy of scale when you have several employees. And in short, the startup pays like 2 minimal wages, but still it saves money. So one more benefit of the law that has been introduced is also governmental support when companies can get 45% support to co-finance high-quality specialists. This is quite new, and I think that it should be much more used it should become much more popular. Of course, we have this one detail that I should mention that industry and fintech industry should be much more active, speaking with the policymakers and participate in policy development and maybe change the position of being not in a waiting position, but also be proactive to initiate dialogues with the policymakers because no one from outside never knows how and when and what are those problems you are reaching every day. That is only your internal issue, and it's important to bring them out to the table. So I think that coordination and maybe participation in a policy discussion should be much more active from the industry part.
Thank you, Marina. I think Renat wanted to add something.
Yeah, just wanted to confirm the statement was said. We just recently made the update with Latvian FinTech landscape together with Dilu, and we realized what number of startups are doing this year, only this year. FinTech-related startup and FinTech companies, so it's complicated to split it, but we see the increase of around 15-20 new companies who came to the market during this year. Who started new fintech, generated new fintech ideas and started new fintech business. And one of the reasons also related to this startup visa, option, etc. And what is important to say, what according to the generally, if you are saying what Latvia has around 600, 700 startups overall, we see what 25% of them are fintech related. And it's important to understand what fintech related startups have a big part of the attracted investment. And we also see what the entrepreneurs one founder who made one fintech related startup made exit, making 3 additional startups. And these trends are shown that we have cases during this year. So we see this trend growing, new ideas are coming to market, new entrepreneurs coming to market, and let's hope that it will be kept as it is, the trend itself.
Thank you, Renat. So Marinette, that were very interesting insights on the taxation. Let's move to HR questions. So this is a very hot question right now. Gunters, how do you solve the hiring problem in Pacer? How do you see the market overall?
Yes, actually, as a fact, we are facing already yes, huge HR problems in Lithuania. And of course, everybody knows that there is a lack of IT specialists in any industry. So, but another thing is AML KYC specialists. So, and if we're talking about IT specialists, it's a bit easier because all we need from these employees to English knowledge of programming skills, and we can hire actually from any country. But if you're talking about AML and KYC specialists, so we see the problem, which is language barrier, because of the local legislation. So the senior top level specialists, they need to follow local legislation, adapt it, and then that's why mainly we are also looking on the local market for these specialists. But the problem is that only few schools, only few companies are providing CMAs certificates. So and it doesn't cover actually existing demand of the specialists. So again, something should be done to so the students would start more learn this field, more opportunities to get these skills, to these knowledges. And yes, this is I would say this is the biggest challenge in HR, in fintech and then financial institutions.
Thank you, Gunters. Mads, global fintech needs demand for global fintech specialists. How do you think, does Latvia have them, and where to get them, from your opinion?
Well, I have always seen the high education rate in Latvia. So there's a wealth of skillful people, absolutely, and talent in Latvia. But I also see that it might be a big fight for them, yeah. So it's hard to get them. And then what I see and what I think is important is create the virtual teams, the remote workers, where you bring in the global experts, yeah, to work in the company. That I see all the time. These virtual teams, remote working, to bring in the deep tech specialists in the team. So I think it needs to be a combination, local recruiting, but also going outside the countries to find the experts that the company need. Yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah, thank you, Mats. Renat, what is, from your opinion, the current status and the barriers in attraction of foreign specialists to the local fintechs?
I think I think the startup law now giving opportunity to attack specialists from abroad for short countries to Europe. We have a couple of things that needed to be changed. It's more related to the languages, because, for example, a person can work in Latvia, but he needs to receive some certificate of Latvian language in some cases. So, and with language, so as you know, internationally, we can all of us communicate in English and finding some another business language to make money. with limitation need to be somehow changed and to modify for people who are coming from abroad to work for international companies. I think it's one of the issues. Second issue to work a little bit faster for the department, for the immigration department, to give opportunity to bring people in a faster mode. But according to our experience, and we had some. So we organize the people to come to here for work to our company. So we see what everything can be done, but you need to do it in the right way, and you need to find to tune everything to do it effectively.
Thank you, Renat. Johan, what is your experience in not only hiring the right specialists, but in adopting them either to corporate structure or to the more dynamic fintech structure?
It's a very good question. I think to start with, I would argue that every company needs a diverse team. I mean, with different background and experience. I think that's a starting point. And then getting you into different culture, because this is about culture, and different companies do have different culture. We have practiced a lot because we have acquired quite a few companies, and that could be a difficult thing coming from a very small company into a bigger company. But I think it's very much about, again, looking at the team and the needs of each and every person, because we're human beings and we have different needs. But I also think where I started, the diversification is important to get some of the kind of fintech, if we generalize, kind of mindset into a bigger corporate structure as well. So the mix is very, very important.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the HR highlights. Very interesting, very helpful. Let's move to the more tricky part, to the crypto scene. Marina, what chances does Latvia have to become a crypto hub, do you think? And which risks and opportunities do you see?
Well, the crypto hub is quite a significant decision, but I would definitely see here the future of opportunities. First of all, we should not miss this possibility as a country on country level. It is related also to European strategy. And as you know, this question is quite well under the development right now and led by a European digital package. And one of the digital package document is a new regulation for crypto assets, regulation to marketing crypto assets, so MiCA we call it. And I think this regulation that will come creates a huge opportunities, not only for Latvia, but on a European level. It will regulate and facilitate crypto asset turnover. It will provide unique framework for authorization of crypto asset service providers, and it will create a new supervision framework. So I see the huge opportunities in relation to that. Of course, the different institutions from Latvian side should be involved into crypto asset development in order to understand more, not only the opportunities, but also the risk side. Because, for example, right now we see some risks related to illegal service providers who are working outside this regulation and who are actually involved in some gray schemes or cyber crimes. That is a risk that we see the most relevant in this area. However, I see that, of course, the cryptocurrencies as such and crypto assets will bring and facilitate the much of economy. The one thing we need to dive into in order to understand better what are those business models. For example, there are some American banks who are already start to provide crypto services to the customers. So there are no such signals for now in Latvia. However, we think that it is also opportunity for the customers, because when you have already full of your investment basket and you have already invested in options in P2P sector and whatever, and crypto is quite risky one because this prices changes every time. You could not make a forecast on that. It brings and creates some open positions, so it's open risk that is not understandable by each and every customers, because as you know, the major of investors, at least 80% are not sophisticated. They're not professional one, but they want to allocate some part of money in order to invest in a very speculative crypto asset. That is their own decision. From regulatory point, we can only say that you can go for it only in case when you have already tried to invest on all other services that are more protected, and you as an investor is more protected. And you have to understand that it's something that is related to open risk, and you can also lose money. That's why we're right now, together with our European colleagues, we're working under this new regulation in a working group. It will not cover all the crypto asset market. It will cover definitely crypto assets in relation to, for example, tokens, security tokens, payment tokens, but still cryptocurrencies is a room for improvement. And I think that we should really not lose these possibilities and to understand what is these good samples and how, for example, fintechs and banks could come and dig into it, and what is a high risk, and we should put more attention to that. So as a regulatory, we would definitely not exclude this industry from the map, but we want to see more prudent approach, more responsibility on that, and more understanding on risk. And if some of our customers, like payment institutions or bank or whatever, will be willing in future to work with the segment, so what we will see is our risk-based approach. So we want to see, so are you working with the legit and licensed companies? If, for example, this new regulation will bring on the table and will allow crypto asset service providers to be licensed institutions, it actually covered, and it will bring and open the door for banking and for other fintech sectors to onboard such customers and to create this ecosystem. Until now, until the regulation is not in place, we are not supervising the cryptocurrencies. In Latvia, this business is supervised by State Revenue Service when you need to go and get a consent on UML procedure. However, in future, it should be let's say, put it on a table as a new opportunity.
Thank you, Marina. That sounds promising but careful. Andrei, in your opinion, do Latvian ecosystem participants see the opportunities in niche? Do they use it?
I believe that definitely yes, because like crypto is like hot term right now, and there is in Latvia also base companies and entrepreneurs who are involved in crypto industry. But like Marina mentioned that the crypto industry will be much more regulated and so on, and regulatory body are ready to work with only those crypto industry part who are okay with regulation, who are ready to comply. Yeah, but the problem is, the tricky part is that like classic crypto enthusiasts, they are resistant resistant to regulation. They are like they like this idea of freedom, and trust between players. So there is some part of crypto industry will be always marginalized. But I believe that right now, because of this regulation, there is a great opportunity for other part who are involved in crypto industry to play this game by the rule, to follow regulation, and it could be great opportunity to build some new trends, and I'm sure that we will see some new products. When some part of crypto society will start to play this game, and it will help also to be more integrated to the classical financial system. That is right now it is quite a big challenge for crypto. They are quite divided from traditional financial system, and they are looking for point where they could be switched on. And so the regulation is quite interesting part how the crypto industry will adapt it. But there is an opportunity for them if they agree. Otherwise, it will be always marginalized.
Yes, I agree, Andrei. Thank you so much. Johan, from your perspective, what are Latvian banking industry players' attitudes towards cooperation with crypto segment of FinTech?
It's also a very good question, and following what Marina and Andrei said, I think There is an interest for sure. We get more and more questions regarding this from the banks, but at the same time, I cannot speak on behalf of them. But we can measure it from the amount of questions we get. So I think there is definitely an interest, but it's in a cautious way, and they want to make it a prudent and safe way forward. But the interest is there, and I think we'll see some development in this area.
Thank you, Johan. Rinat, today seeing countries like Salvador or Switzerland adopting crypto everywhere, adoption is coming. What future do you see for Latvia?
I think that Latvia will not do it soon, and one of the main reasons because Latvia in the Eurozone, so that we have the European currency. But the openness to the crypto, it's not only to crypto, but blockchain or technology, what is related to the blockchain, are very important. We see the trends and people and companies and big organizations starting to use the blockchain technologies, and the openness of regulator to give opportunities to marketplace, electronic money institution, payment service providers to use the blockchain and to provide the services for crypto. It's very important, because otherwise it will be complicated to compete with different jurisdictions that are starting to adopt everything related to blockchain and crypto. So we need we need to use the opportunity, but not to lose it. But we need to use it now, because otherwise tomorrow we can lose it. So, and it's good to have this discussion to understand what Estonia has a lot of licenses. They close some licenses, but still a lot of companies working there. Different countries are declaring what they want to provide the licenses for the payment in crypto. And Latvia can bring huge attention if Latvia will say, okay, we're ready to give 5 licenses to the crypto exchange or crypto payments. We want to be pioneers in Europe and Eurozone. So it can be very attractive, and we will have a lot of people who will come. And also we need to remember what Latvian FinTech entrepreneurs, they have very successful project related to blockchain and crypto, successful global. For example, like Bitfuel, a huge organization, what part of people are related to Latvia, and we understand that they are we have a lot of specialists who are working in blockchain technology, from the technical part, from the part related to the transaction, etc. And only if the regulator will say, okay, we are open, we can bring these people back. And we need some talents and entrepreneurs to come back to Latvia and to start new businesses. It will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, it sure will. Gunters, what is the adoption of crypto with Latvian FinTechs? How do you see that? Do you see that for your company?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, we are a bit cautious about crypto industry, but what can I admit? So that actually what we see, the main problem is licensing, actually, and for companies who want to be involved in this industry, it's quite critical. They face huge problems with cooperation with banks without license, and so we see every day we see a lot of entrepreneurs from Latvia as well who want to be involved in this industry, and what they do, they go to other countries, they establish companies in other countries where this licensing is already in place. So for example, Estonia. So anyway, I can just agree with previous speakers. So there's a huge opportunity. So, but the main problem is regulation and licensing. When it will be done, again, it will be great signal for entrepreneurs, for business, global business, to come to Latvia and then start the business from Latvia.
Yeah, thank you, Gunters. And now, Mats, what potential for crypto do you see?
Well, I think we all see a lot of potential here, and I need to echo the what we are lacking, and that's regulation and proper management of AML and KYC and customer protection. I think that's what needs to be put in place before we will see this sort of get a broader distribution. But absolutely a big opportunity going. But as many of the presenters here, we are also cautious and really looking for the regulation part to be in place.
Thank you, Mats. And also, surprisingly, this was the last question. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to cover all of the questions that you listeners have added during these discussions, but rest assured that we will answer them in writing. So you will get all of the questions. If the questions are addressed specifically to the person, that person will answer the question. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the participants who had very interesting highlights today. Thank you for everyone who joined us to listen. And now I'm passing the microphone to Marina.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, really, Darius. It was a good discussion. And now we will jump into the next discussion. Our next discussion and topic is also quite interesting, and it will be related to challenges of Latvian regulatory regime and new era of Latvian financial sector. So in this part of the discussion, our market participants and regulatory representative will discuss what are the challenges of the regulatory regime and what are the differences between jurisdictions and countries. So is it possible to regulator to ensure the proportionality in regulation or decrease or increase any kind of the burden, and how it's taken into account by new products and from the risk side? So we will also dive into very interesting AML questions in relation to high-risk customers and how to manage them and what to do, and when to find the balance between the compliance requirements, regulatory and business development. So I would like to introduce speakers of our second panel. And of course, it will be a great pleasure for us all to discuss this topic. So we have today on the panel Mārtiņš Valters, co-founder of Mintos and Mintos Payments. We have Stanislavs Sinikovich, head of sales and regional development of Latvian Pasta Bank. We have Ivan Zhiznievskis, managing director and CEO of payment service institution Free as Money. We have Agnese Alene, head of licensing division in Financial Capital and Market Commission, and Sandra Mielova, head of non-banking AML audit division in Financial Capital and Market Commission. So hello, everyone. It's glad to see you. I hope we will have also good discussion today. So I would like to start with what would be the main regulatory challenges and in managing the risk and facilitating the developments of FinTech. And Agnese, please, I would like to hear the first panelist, your view on what are the main regulatory challenges. What do you see right now?
Thank you. First of all, greetings to all participants. So yes, of course, the regulation also face the same challenges as all others in this changeable world. Especially it has to be taken into account that mostly the regulation is adopted by European Commission, and so it's via directives and regulations. And thus, actually, it takes a very long time for the adaptation, and so it's usually do not cover all the newest products and developments. Of course, the market reacts and develop on the needs of clients and customers, and FCMC as a supervisor, and I think that all other supervisors in Europe as well, we try to find interpretation and opinion how to adopt the regulation for the new products and new services. And actually, we also try to cooperate by each other and also cooperate with ESAs as EBA or ESMA in order just to get a common approach and common view, especially in order to somehow improve the situation in cross-border situations, because of course it's quite a big risk for cross-border servicing. Never mind, this year actually we got quite good and work. So we got 4 new investor brokerage license, 2 new electronic money institution license, as well several approvals for alternative investment fund managers. So it seems that there is some interest in the market. So we will try to do best and to also follow all the newest issues and newest services and to cooperate with market as well in order just to go further and to improve the situation in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Martic, what is your opinion? How the regulator may facilitate to the development on the fintech?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's kind of a number of areas where regulator can help. First one would be on collaboration. And on collaboration, what I mean is basically when I kind of look at the regulatory landscape, it's not only kind of about kind of a regulator per se. I see it's kind of consisting of three building blocks. So one is kind of infrastructure, meaning kind of all the access to financial system, capacity, knowledge. Then it's kind of rules how to use that infrastructure and supervision of how those rules are obeyed. And for a company, well, you cannot just like, or like any fintech, you cannot just like work on one. You need how kind of that all of those three are kind of working together. And for this one, it means that kind of regulator, like government, the other government institutions, they should kind of work very hand on hand. And I think that was kind of also touched upon in the previous panel, be it like taxation, be it some access to the banking system. So if it's just like a regulator as FCMC kind of doing part of things, but like others are not moving in tandem, then this is something, well, which kind of doesn't work so well. So this is definitely kind of one thing which can kind of work, how regulator could kind of help development of fintechs and kind of working with others. The other one is what I would say kind of a risk tolerance or risk assessment. Because basically, well, I don't envy kind of people working for the regulator because it's basically they're kind of in a tricky situation. In a way, they will kind of never kind of get the credit for what is done good. Just like try to remember when it was the last time when you kind of reach out to your kind of local politician and said like, yes, that was kind of excellent things that you did. But whenever something kind of goes south, well, be assured that like there will be somebody to be blamed. And it's much more easier kind of to blame somebody with a hindsight. And at the same time, kind of we are in situations that, well, we need to kind of test out new things, find new solutions, so to kind of be able to grow in a meaningful way. Because if we kind of don't do that, well, the best what we can be is kind of a very late copycats. And this, of course, kind of involves failures. It's like kind of putting something to kind of learn to ski. So I'm putting my daughter to ski, and definitely she will kind of fall again. But at the end of the day, like hopefully she kind of can ski. So what it means in kind of in regulator, there's kind of implicitly built a mechanisms that, well, they are kind of intended to kind of shy away from new things or over-regulate something from scratch. So the trick is how to kind of change the mindset or be it some kind of with some incentives, how to kind of not over-regulate it first, because, well, that's the worst thing that can happen, like for any new business or initiative is kind of over-regulated. And so basically, if there is some kind of more kind of risk-based approach, when you kind of take into account at very first, you know, there will be failures, you just kind of need to deal with them, but it's kind of a VC approach, yes, number of fails, but like the benefits will outweigh that. And the last thing, what is bit related to this and how regulator can help is, and this is what also Agnes touched upon, is on kind of having an open mindset. Because well, basically, if you like fintech, it's kind of about doing some new things in a new way. And if you're kind of just like applying something that is kind of previously or like previous in legislations, then the easiest way is say no. And like a example from life, it's more kind of coming from investment area, is let's say fractional investments where you can buy like half a share of Apple or like 1/10 of the share. Well, it doesn't, like the laws doesn't say that like it can be done or like how to do that. So the easiest way to say, well, it doesn't prescribe, but the law doesn't say that it is prohibited, because basically like 5-10 years when this regulation was laid out, there was it was not technologically possible to do that. And then it's again just like basically kind of the minds of the people involved, and like can we kind of look at that in a way how we can do that. And overall, I think there's kind of a lot of those things are kind of going in the right direction in Latvia, at least from our experience.
Thank you, Martin, for commenting. It's interesting topics that you have touched regarding this risk tolerance. Sandra, could you please elaborate a little bit more? So taking into account those challenges that now have been named, how to balance between these risks and the development side? What would be this risk-based approach or golden apple?
Yeah, thank you, Marina. I think looking from the ML perspective, the keyword should be understanding of risks, and only from there you can go to application of risk-based approach. And for like some new ideas, there is very closely, we should very closely work with the industry. So they should understand the risks and from their perspective, and we as a regulator can try to help them how to apply proper measures for managing these risks. Actually, I very much like the example from Martin, how he's teaching his daughter to ski. Usually you are not doing it in a bathing suit. You are putting some protective measures so she doesn't break any bones when she fall. So the AML can be like a protective measures, and when you fall, you do not break, but you maybe just get some bruises. So coming back to this risk-based approach, I think in the last 2 years, we have put additional effort into strengthening these matters. So we have made changes in regulation, especially regards to customer due diligence. We have developed recommendations explaining in more details this principle, and we are always open to individual consultations on best practices. And sometimes we are looking for this practice hand in hand with this potential fintech company if it's offering some type of new business. And I think a lot has been done to facilitate this risk-based approach. And I believe that at this point, at the end of the day, the biggest challenge, especially maybe for smaller fintech companies, is actually finding an experienced ML specialist that could help in developing appropriate controls, developing this internal control measures. Because at the end of the day, since a risk-based approach is no one size fits all, it's something like a magic of this approach, but it can also be a challenge for someone who's not so experienced in this area. Yeah, so that's a small comment from my side.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Ivan, we're seeing you are in a different country, in the most interesting place in the world, most probably, but we have a still question for you.
I am, yes, please. I was scrolling through London traffic, but yeah, here I am for you.
Okay, so could you please share your view? What should be done by state institutions in order to attract new participants if we want to boom the sector in Latvia, from your perspective?
Well, I have 2 points on that one. Well, for one, the license itself, I don't think it has much of a value without access to payment, or in our case, to payment rails, to financial infrastructure. Because we can see that lots of participants, big and small, that have all sorts of licenses issued by different European countries, they suffer because they can't get themselves connected either to central banks or to high street banks. And without this support, their business don't make any sense because they can't service customers. Okay, so I think that the primary role of the regulator is to encourage either big banks in their country that they can support, and they must support fintechs and communicate clear rules on what they would expect from them, or to create such a fantastic product as Lithuania has created by enabling fintechs to get directly connected to their central bank. So you can see by the number of licenses issued, like England is number one, and there are lots of banks that are happy to support fintechs here. Lithuania is another good example. But across other European countries, I don't think there are many of the regulators that actually do the job and encourage this support. That's for one. And for two, I think, again, it's very important for the regulator to communicate properly that fintechs are good market participants in line with other like banks or asset managers. Because as Rinat rightly mentioned in the previous panel, Estonia, for example, issued plenty of crypto licenses. But do others value them? I don't think so.
Thanks. Thank you very much for your comment. It's really very valid, I must say. Stanislav.
Marina, can I add something? Do you think that Bank of Latvia can consider fintechs to be connected directly to SEPA through its rails? Do you think anything that you've done it on to convince them?
So I think it's a good question to address it to our Latvian banking colleagues. I hope they're also watching this. We have tried to reach them with these questions, and currently they're not ready to provide this infrastructure for the other payment service providers. But it is. I hope that we can also bring your comment on the table, and just hope that they will also have a relevant comment on your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marina, I don't hear you.
Sorry, if we started to talking regarding the banking side and closely to this collaboration. So Stanislav, could you please from your side give some comments? So from banking side, what is your approach to fintech? So the fintechs are looking for the banks. So what are you doing in this area?
Okay, thank you. For now, we are mostly concentrated on cooperation with those fintech companies that have their financial licenses. Nevertheless, they have their own licenses. We still perform the enhanced due diligence while basically at the all steps of cooperation. So we study their business side, who are their clients, what do they do, where they are located, what are their services provided. We study their KYC and AML procedures, where do they see their risks, how do they mitigate and manage those. We study their IT systems. Then we make a big interview where on both sides there are people from business and IT and AML. And then the fintech presenting us their business model, the life cycle of their clients, starting from the onboarding process. How does it look like for a client? How does it look like at the back end? How does the fintech company monitor screening the transactions? What lists do they use? What tools do they use? And all this stuff. So many things. And behind all that, the reason is that we have to make sure not only that the fintech company has their own compliance and AML policies, but that they are able to perform and fulfill the policies that are written. So, and only after that, we're able to summarize all this information and make our decision if we work with them or not. So, as you might notice, this is not an easy job to do. But when we talk about business, the fintech companies that are not regulated or they are not subject to AML, then it is even more challenging because very often these activities are either not regulated or the regulation is not clear. And as you know, the banks are always responsible for the AML compliance. And this makes us to end up in a situation sometimes when we understand the business of the client, but the due to AML regulations, provision of the services is either impossible or inefficient. So this is something that needs to be improved.
Well, I think that when you see such a situation, you can definitely contact Sandra for the help. She's really specializing in understanding the business models, especially in non-banking area, to understand. So
we are actually in the process of writing right now.
Fantastic. It's a good sample. So okay, so let's look from different angle, from the licensing point of view. So licensing process. Does anything change in this year? Do you see any differences in licensing approach across EU? So the getting license experience in Latvia and experience outside the Latvia. So let's make a comparison. Agnes, I would like to ask first question to you. So what are the main changes in licensing process in Latvia, and do you see any differences in approach across the countries?
Yes, firstly, I have to say that the requirements for the licensing is the same in whole European countries. So because it's defined by, regulated by the directives as well by ESA guidelines. So the requirements are the same. That's the face of of course, this is different communication methods and different interpretation methods, but they vary from country to country. And there are those differences. But of course, actually, we also try to do the best in last years. So at the moment, we are just looking through the process we have on in the institution. So we try to become more transparent and to give more possibilities to communicate before the licensing procedure. In order just to facilitate and in order to get a very clear view to potential clients how to manage that. And so I want to welcome everyone if there is some questions and need some help or consultation. So just contact us. And so the first step is just communication and to get clear guide through the process. So I believe that this is, of course, the licensing is just one issue. Of course, there may be some differences in the requirements for the operation, especially there is some room of interpretation, and it can vary from country to country. But of course, we will give information regarding our requirements, and so just to make easily this process.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. Martin, I have a question to you. Recently, your organization have been hotly involved in the licensing process, and you have been licensed as actually you've got two already as a brokerage company and also as a payment institution. Could you please share your experience in this area?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we indeed got like two licenses, and the approach was or like experience was slightly different. And let's say for the payments, which is e-money entity, that I say was kind of very straightforward. These are kind of great forms created by the regulator, which like super clear, like what kind of information is necessary. While the brokerage license took longer time, but we at the same time kind of acknowledged that it was kind of more demanding because we were also kind of creating a new product that basically kind of does not exist in Europe yet. So overall, kind of what we appreciated during the process that it was kind of people with whom we talked from the regulator side was kind of very responsive and approachable. And we have had the experience in other countries. So either that's because we're kind of it's our home country, or like otherwise it's definitely was kind of much better. And what we also kind of appreciate is that people are kind of ready to find solutions. It doesn't mean that we kind of for each and every kind of proposal we kind of get a confirmation, but at least it's kind of possible to talk about that and having kind of a good dialogue. In terms of like what could be improved from our experience, or like if we would have kind of gone the second time, what we would like to have better is regarding the timing and more about kind of forecastability about this timing, so that kind of we know like how long does it takes like as a due date. That's one thing, and other is kind of not to pick on, especially on AML, but again, like if we compare with our experience what was in other countries, so the level of detail for AML procedures is definitely kind of more detailed here. Again, like from our experience elsewhere, we have had like where it's just like required like 5-page document on AML, and well, we kind of acknowledge that is not enough. So I don't know how the regulators there are kind of checking that. Here, maybe we're kind of going a bit on the other directions that it's like very detailed procedures, how everything needs to be done. Well, hopefully that like plays out as a benefit that when the only thing that's kind of left is on implementing them or kind of executing. So there's kind of not so much discussion later on, like how we have applied. And what I liked about or appreciated about the process that like once it was over, we actually, Agnes invited us to kind of give a feedback, which also kind of showed that, well, regulator FCMC is kind of looking forward how to kind of improve that process. So there were kind of number of companies which were granted license last year. So hopefully that also kind of helps to kind of improve the process further.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. Yeah, actually, just to add a little bit more, who don't know, we are in FCMC have reviewed our licensing process, and we invited our customers who recently go through the process of getting licensing to share their experience, and we use design thinking methodologies to understand what are the routes for improvement from our side, and we're really very appreciated and thankful for everyone who've been involved in this and everyone who shared their own suggestions and ideas to that. It was a very valuable experience for us. Ivan, you also are a licensed institution in UK, and you also have a different experience with other regulatory. So do you see any difference in approaches? What is your view?
Yeah, I do. So we are, as electronic money institution, licensed in the UK, and we're in process of getting similar licenses in Luxembourg and in Dubai, as we speak, literally. And actually, we had a fantastic experience with FKTK earlier this year when we were thinking of acquiring another payment institution in Eastern Europe, and we asked for a meeting with FKTK, and it has been arranged fairly quickly. I think it took just 2 days to get everyone on Zoom, and we've got all our questions answered and expectations set. So I can share a few things from personal experience dealing with the UK FCA and with regulators on the continent. I would say that UK is trying to eliminate all the entry barriers, because there are lots of entrepreneurs now that would like to try themselves in fintech space. And what they do, they are primarily looking at the founders and their personalities, and they analyze if they are capable of managing financial institution, but they're not very detailed in going through policies and procedures, because their approach is to get those startups through as quickly as possible. But later on, they, I would say, delegate due diligence over to banks that are at the end of the day responsible for connecting those startups to payment infrastructure. And I think that's the way to do it. Okay. I was quite surprised to hear from my fintech colleague Martins that we would rather ask some regulators to ask for more information on AML and KYC side. I would rather not, okay, because we as fintechs are being policed all over, okay, because that's the regulator on the first place, and then there's a bank on the second place that are asking same questions and sort of fulfill their supervisory function, perhaps delegated by the regulator. So I would say the approach in continental Europe and the UK is different in a way where European regulators would analyze all the policies and procedures up to the letter, where the UK would look at the big picture and then delegate due diligence on the next level of financial infrastructure. I would say that the only thing to be, and that's fine, okay, there could be different approaches, that's totally fine. My only suggestion would be to set up right expectations to the applicants, what is expected, what the regulator would be looking into in the first place, whether they would expect very detailed IML KYC approach, or they would like to have more an IT side of things and detailed description of IT infrastructure behind the business, or maybe they would like to see more jobs to be created in the country. And of course, speeding up the process, because for startups, speed is everything. So the one who is offering more speedy, fast track regulatory onboarding will win the competition.
Yeah, this is a huge room for improvement, and I think it's really interesting what you say. So now we see what have been accelerator for the fintech growth, and why actually other countries' regulator are onboarded several times more those payment institutions, for example, or other fintech companies. Okay, that is interesting. Interesting that you have mentioned. Sandra, could you please continue and dive a little bit more deeper and maybe break this ice in ML already? So why companies have this different expectation to regulatory requirements? So Ivan just mentioned that expectations must be clear. So what is your view?
I think, just to echo what Agnes said, legislation is the same across all European countries. So obviously, at the end of the day, I think the main issue is the different approaches from the supervisors in regarding this licensing process. So just to give you a little look back in time, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was quite easy to obtain a PSP license here in Latvia, because from our side, it was also mostly this tick-a-box approach. I believe that there are still quite a number of regulators that follow the same approach now, and that would answer the issue that Martin brought up, that how could a 5-page procedure could be enough, right? But we have learned from this our experience that this is not the most sustainable approach, not just for us, not just for our market as a whole, but as an individual company as well. Since almost any of our following supervisory activities resulted in some serious consequences for this company, even the suspension or canceling of the business. And I believe that it does not promote trust from the customers or from the partner banks. Yeah, we see that the banks are very cautious right now due to these historic experiences. And therefore, since we have changed our approach to what I could call quality versus quantity, since we don't just tick a box, but we look at the quality of controls, and we go case by case, and we provide individual consultations to every company. And we see it that if a company is interested in a long-term and sustainable development of its business, that this approach should be seen not like an obstacle, but rather as a good starting point in receiving constructive one-on-one, and I might stress out consequence-free advice from the regulator, rather than maybe losing the license or paying significant fines after a first inspection, which we can see maybe in some other countries. I won't say names, but we see that in other countries, if a company loses its license 5-6 months after it has been granted, I think it's not a very good indication on like this country's model or whatever. So yeah, and as a final thought, I also believe that our approach can be a good starting point in encouraging cooperation between our fintechs and our banks, since we can convincingly say that we apply the same standards to supervision to both sides. And if like company has undergone the licensing procedure under our close supervision, that the bank can be sure that it doesn't have to repeat the same procedures, as Stanislaus maybe mentioned. It doesn't have to check procedures once more because the regulator has already done that. So I think it's a good starting point for successful cooperation of both sides. So yeah, that's from my perspective. Thank you.
May I ask something, Sandra? A follow-up question, please. What do you see is, from your own experience, from the applicants that you review, is the weakest place in their application, whether it's a certain policy or procedure, and where you see the significant risk when it comes to allowing payment service providers to get those licenses in Latvia?
I think usually it's at the end of the day, it comes to the irrelevant internal control system. The company wants to work usually in high-risk business, but internal procedures, internal resources are not sufficient for managing of these risks. And this is like the main rolling stone, as Marina mentioned, I believe. Yeah, I think that could be the main issue. And also, this is the thing that the banks will also look at. How are the procedures not just on paper in place, but are they applied effectively when the company starts to work? And that's why we look at this issue at the starting point, at the entry point. So when the company receives this license, we can be quite sure that if the company follows these procedures, there shouldn't be any major issues afterwards when we come to inspection or any other issue arise. I hope it answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Sandra, maybe we can dive a little bit further. So you just mentioned this internal control system, and could you please elaborate a little bit more? So if we're talking about those three like hottest topics in this area, what are they?
Yeah, as I already mentioned, I think the first and most important would be formal procedures. From what we have seen, in many cases, is like copy-paste from regulations or like copied from some older banking procedures that somehow circulates the market. And as I mentioned before, since there is no one-size-fits-all, the procedures should also be tailored to the business and to the risk assessment of the company, and as well as they should be practicable. For example, and this is also come to this idea: what is a risk-based approach? If the company works, for example, with local customers, it shouldn't have so detailed procedures on how to perform enhanced due diligence on non-resident customers, because it's not relevant for them. So this is the utmost issue that we see that could also make this licensing process longer, while we go again through all the processes and try to understand what should be amended, like it could be tailored to the business. The second definitely is consultants. We often see that, especially companies from other countries, they ask for help of consultants to prepare this documentation. But usually these consultants do not have an understanding of the business specifics of this specific fintech company, and maybe these consultants themselves do not have this practical AML experience, and which comes back to the issue number one: the procedures or internal control system are not in line with the business of this company. So our suggestion is, if the consultants are to be used, experts from the company should be actively involved in this process, so the end result meets the expectations of us as a supervisor, but as a company themselves as well. And I think the third one would be the question of resources, and not just by number, but importantly by expertise. And it also is risk-based, and mostly it can be seen in high-risk businesses. For example, if a fintech company wants to operate a high-risk business, it should have enough resources. And as I said, not just by number, but by previous experience for developing an effective internal control system for managing these risks. So yeah, that would be the three issues from my side.
So the high-risk customers is not prohibited. So it's a question: how do you manage those risks?
Of course, yeah. The higher the risks, the more sophisticated the control should be to manage these risks.
Absolutely. Agnes, from your side, what would be those top three issues or problematics or sensitive issues when customers make mistakes and shall pay more attention during the licensing?
Yes, I think Sandra already mentioned the main issues. Of course, the consultants is one of the big issues, because what we see that maybe the companies try to just attract some consultants and just give to do everything for them by themselves. But actually, this is quite necessity to involve also from the business side in the development of all the procedures and all the documents, because of course we see in the practice there are just copy-paste procedures, and they are not connected with the real life and real business. So this is one of the main issues, and so it leads to the long time taken for the licensing and just to make new documents. So the next issue is also, yes, as Sandra said, the involvement of expertise in drafting of all the documents and all the process. So it's the experts has to be involved from the beginning. And actually, the third issue is also to use, someone tries just to start with the official notification for the licensing. But actually, the first step has to be the consultation and pre-notification phase. It also will save time for all the process and actually give maybe very clear view on expectations from our side as well. So this close cooperation is the main issue that has to be first step. So I think this is the main.
Thanks. Yeah, interesting. Martin, from your perspective, what was the most difficult for you during the licensing process? But in fact, it turned out that it was quite simple. Is it anything else?
Well, I think like once you kind of dig deep enough so that you kind of fully understand, basically nothing is difficult at the end of the day, and it then kind of ties back with what Sandra and Agnes was mentioning, is that well, there are like either some things that are kind of super specific, and there is kind of little knowledge either by kind of any persons in the market or less so with consultants. And then it kind of takes time to kind of really understand. And at first you kind of think that it's kind of impossible, but once you kind of really understand, it's, well, everything is just like matter of technique. And likewise, I would say it's also kind of on the regulators side if there's something new. So it also takes some time to kind of get acquainted with that and kind of understand how that could work, rather than just like looking if it has been kind of applied previously. So these, I would say, are kind of the biggest challenges. But again, like once you kind of understand it, everything is easy afterwards.
Ivan, from your experience, do you have any suggestions for newcomers?
Actually, I agree with what Agnes raised. I would say you should own your business plan. Don't hire consultants from the very beginning. Yeah, just try to formulate your business model in the way that other people can read and understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and outline who are your customers and what is the core product that you're offering. Afterwards, you can give it out to consultants and they will shape it out. Yeah, there's no problem. But I see lots of regulators complain, and I hear it all the time, that people just hire someone to draft the business plan and to draft the application for them. And then the regulator just goes back and forth in order to understand what's the real business model. So yeah, I think it's important to say and to formulate for yourself what you do and how you're going to do it.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. When the management is involved in a business side and in communication with the regulator, is absolutely a different process while we are communicating close in time with consultants. For in the middle. Just in the previous question, we also a little bit touched these high-risk customers. So how to balance between these compliance requirements and set up this level of risk expected. So Sandra, could you a little bit more elaborate regarding some specific market participants and high-risk customers? So how to find this balance between compliance and requirements and high risk, and what is the difference between high risk and illegal actions? So sometimes during the consultancy, we have a feeling that applicants do not really make the differentials to those two stuff. So it's quite important to understand.
This is the best question ever, Marina. I think the answer is quite straightforward to the second part. If the customer performs illicit activities, it is not a high-risk customer. It is an instant report to the FIU with possible freezing of the accounts. Having said that, sometimes, especially for companies that want to operate in high-risk industries or high-risk customers, sometimes, yes, there is a very thin line between a high-risk and illegal activity, because these illegal activities will try to disguise in order to gain access to the financial system. For example, for a very, very ugly example, sometimes online dating sites are used as a front for illegal pornography sites. So it takes a lot of additional resources from the compliance team to manage these risks and actually make sure that the line is not crossed and the company knows that it's servicing high risk and not an illegal business. And that is mostly one of the main reasons why some of the banks, for example, do not want to work in these high-risk industries, because it takes a lot of effort, a lot of resources to manage these risks. But as we mentioned before, it is not forbidden to work in high-risk industries unless it's illegal. But you have to have adequate resources and adequate controls to manage these risks. And this is the risk-based approach. For example, if there is a fintech company offering like small-scale payment services in some local markets, of course, the controls will be very simple. But if the company works in high-risk industries with high-risk customers, high-risk geographies, the controls will be definitely much more sophisticated for that. And this is the risk-based approach, briefly.
I think that Stanislav can elaborate here also a little bit more. So Sandra just said it, that high-risk customers, for example, if they are still even licensed companies like License FX, CFD, or License Crypto, or License Gambling, you just have to think how this risk control work and manage. In your experience with the fintechs, so what are you evaluating the most, establishing the cooperation with the fintech companies as a bank?
Well, mostly I evaluate that they are very experienced and professional teams. They are very demanding, most of them, and they are pushing us to launch new products and constant improvement, to share experience. We hear a lot from them. They often work in different jurisdictions. They know how the process works here and there. So it's this is what I evaluate the most.
Yeah, thank you. Your opinion is important in that sense. So let's go a little bit more from the different side and look the collaboration between banks and fintechs. This topic was a bit today also covered by the first discussion panel, but would like also to know your opinion. Stanislav, how would you evaluate the Latvian banking openness to fintech? And actually, are you a fintech bank, or how to approach it?
Well, we do consider ourselves as a fintech bank in a way. We already have a set of products to be a primary bank for fintech, at least for the financial companies. So like starting from safeguarding accounts and addressable big connection, acquiring services, so basically all they need. We also are working on improvements, and next year we have big plans. We are building up our own card processing center. We are about to work on virtual IBANs, Target 2 connection, and many other things. So we are going to be busy, and we know how to make ourselves better. I'm sure we will. With regards to market as such, I think that for us, maybe it was a little bit more naturally to become open to fintech due to our deep knowledge and expertise in e-commerce business. But what we also notice is that some other banks in Latvia, they start hiring experts to build up banking as a service in their banks. So this is showing that Latvian banking system will be more and more open in the future for fintech, which is great, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Ivan, from your perspective, can you mention some good samples of collaboration between banking and fintech?
Yeah, plenty. It's great that there are more and more banks that are being open to fintechs. Well, there's great examples in the UK, which is Clearbank here, and there's Banking Circle in Luxembourg. And there is one in Estonia. What's the name? Not on the top of my head. Sorry, I completely forgot about it. Anyway, it's great to hear that banks in Latvia are now open to collaboration with fintechs. But again, and I saw that question, someone submitted a question on the Q&A tab here on Zoom. I think it's important that FKTK clearly communicates to these banks what is expected from their supervisory point of view. Because I find personally extremely difficult to work with Latvian banks and to build up any fintech partnership, because rather than, well, supervising our activity, they would check every single step that we do. And it comes down to another question. What would FKTK consider as a high-risk business? For example, we are not dealing with any high-risk industries as FinTech. However, Latvian banks would treat us as a high-risk business just because we are electronic money institution. Is it a fair approach in your opinion, Marina?
I would love to address this question to Sandra, actually. How those payment service providers of electronic money institutions are treated from regulatory part, how we do see them?
As the companies themselves apply risk-based approach, the same we do the same. Just to give you an example, in legislation there are different risk elements that should be assessed to verify the final risk level of the company. For example, it's the customer base, geographies, type of services that the company is offering, delivery channels, and so on. So taking account how all these factors come together, we come to the final risk assessment of the company. So sometimes I don't know specifically your business, so I can't give you like specific answer why you are treated as a high risk. But sometimes if there's a company that operates in broad geographies, offers unlimited value payments, it can be considered as a high risk company, even though it doesn't work with a high risk within high risk industries, because from the perspective of the bank, that transactions are usually very big amount. There are big amount of transactions. They are not transparent from the bank's side of view, and sometimes they can see it as a high risk company. And this is when you have to step in and show the bank that you have controls in place to manage these risks. And if the bank has a sufficient, it makes sure that you manage your risks, that it will treat you accordingly. But if the bank sees that you are lacking in applying practical controls, of course, the bank takes the risks on themselves, because by offering payment services to this PSP, it shares the not the responsibility, but the possible consequences if something bad happens. So banks are cautious, yes, but I think from the bank perspective, at the end of the day, it's also a risk-based approach. They look what type of business each and every company is offering.
And Sandra, I would argue. I would argue with you that, for example, in Luxembourg, the Financial Commission, in its guidance, says if the company is regulated, if it's a financial institution and it's regulated in the European Union, then it poses a lower risk because it's being regulated and its procedures and policies has been checked, and the company is being supervised by the regulator on a regular basis. Yeah, but what's happening in Latvia? Latvian banks would treat all the FinTechs very cautiously, and you're right, just because perhaps they are lacking this communication from the regulator that they can actually work with them. So it's we can call it a cautious optimism. Lots of Latvian banks are open to this cooperation, but I think it's getting stuck.
I think
maybe I can just remember that each bank also has their own strategy and policy, and sometimes working and collaborating with the fintechs, unfortunately, it's not an agenda in each and every bank. So what we see that some banks are more open and would be ready to onboard those customers and take those risks. Some banks are not willing to take those types of the customer on their balance sheet. So it is also under the strategy, same that you decide you are working with a private individual, so you are working only with the corporates, for example. It actually takes. Sandra, if you could add something, so please.
This is the same thing I wanted to mention. It comes from at the end of the day, there's a risk appetite of the bank itself, but it also comes back to what I mentioned before about this tick a box approach or quality approach to licensing procedure. Because yes, on paper, each regulator is supposed to give its approval to final procedures, but if it's just tick a box approach, then the quality differs from these different approaches. And that is why I mentioned that for our fintechs that has been licensed by us, we are confident to open discussion between our banks, between our licensed fintechs to facilitate the cooperation between both sides. But we cannot give the same quality assurance for other countries because we do not know the supervisory approach of these regulators.
Of course, but however, I would hope that, well, the European laws are more or less, well, on the same level. So you'd rather have this level of comfort for other European jurisdictions, not the UK, of course. UK is not Europe anymore. But actually, I'm really pleased to hear that if FinTech is licensed in Latvia, then perhaps it's duly licensed and you checked everything, and banks can rely on your judgment here. So if you could please communicate that to your Latvian banks, that the Latvian license actually, well, is cool enough to work with, and you can rely on the processes because you have checked them.
This is definitely on our to-do list to facilitate more open discussion between all three parties, and maybe put some best practice examples in our recommendations, or even to look on some legislation rules that still have in place to maybe change them. So we are definitely we have definitely put that on our to-do list. So yeah. So you're
Thank you, Sandra. Great to hear that.
To receive a Latvian license.
I have already noted that.
Agnes, do you have anything to add here regarding these challenges?
I can just add that, yes, I agree that actually this cooperation is very related to this risk-based approach and the risk appetite of the bank and bank strategy. And the thing that is prohibited by the regulation, this is the discrimination, especially regarding the competition aspects. So, and in such situation, when we find out that there could be some kind of situation like that, we usually intervene as mediator, and we try to just cooperate with the bank and the entity, and just to try to resolve the situation. And of course, there cannot be the situations of the discrimination that's we're looking for. But all other aspects, of course, this is just common issues, and yes. But actually, I agree with Stanislav that I also see from the banking side that perhaps banks, yes, they attract more experts on these issues, and they start to look on new businesses and the fintech issues. And so I believe that in the future there could be very close relationships, maybe some specific banks who work with these issues and who are specialized on that. So I see the place for that.
Martin, do you also see the place for that, or what banks should do more or to help fintech, or how to collaborate?
Well, if I look just like back like a few years ago, when into like the attitude was from the banks that, well, fintechs won't last, and like all the fintechs said like, fuck you banks, and like will be out of business in 5 years. So I'm glad that like this first phase is over, and now like both are here to stay, and like some will kind of still fight to dominate the world, some will kind of get acquired both ways. So fintechs acquiring banks, banks acquiring fintechs, as well as some will kind of look for niche to where to cooperate. And I think this is tying back to the previous conversation, that well, there are some banks that kind of see like this kind of niche because like many are unserved, and they are kind of specializing that, and I think they have kind of built a great business. And even though I'm like from fintech perspective, I would be very much for that, like we can kind of push anybody kind of to cooperate with them, but I think it's in a way it is kind of a risk-based approach, and therefore it's kind of more important from kind of tying back like what I said at the beginning, it's to create that infrastructures that particular part of markets such as like fintechs, they are not dependent only on banks. They have kind of access, if you mean about like payments, to the payment gateways, and then you kind of have a kind of same level playing field for everybody.
Thank you. I think it's very valuable comment. So I think we have covered a lot of questions today, and we have also very short one special guest who would like to ask the question online. I would like also to introduce Mike Shafrov, Chief Executive Officer from Expate. Hello, Mike. Hope you can hear us. Actually, we're almost running out of time, so please shoot one question.
Sure, it'll be a quick one. Hi, everyone. It's really great that this is happening. I'm really excited. Just wanted to share that. I'll ask a question not about actually licensing, but about operations. And the question is that I mean, a lot of fintech companies usually have very dense transactional flows with big quantities of customers and customer transaction velocity due to like their nature of their business, technological capabilities, their deployed systems. So in the eyes of the regulator, would it be possible to use artificial intelligence and machine learning systems for automatic transaction, customer screening and approval? Would that be possible?
Well, I will probably take this question on myself. So what we see right now is that we are facilitating also the usage of financial technologies and technologies as such in the financial sector. And the regulation itself is technology neutral. So it doesn't matter what kind of technologies are you using. The question is how you manage the risk that these technologies are produced. So if you are planning to work with and apply, for example, AI models or machine learning elements or some kind of usage of automated system that just will support your business, there is no specific financial sector regulations that saying that you cannot or cannot use it. The only we have a specific regulation in Latvia in local on national level. There are rules number 150 that applies to all financial institutions, and you can also review what types of the risk are related directly to your business. If you are talking regarding the AI, so we will also be waiting for overall European Artificial Intelligence Act that will be to financial sector, and let's see what will be done. If you are absolutely freely can use your AI or ML or any other technologies in a business. So the only thing that if you are using kind of algorithms that must be audited before you apply. Changes into system should be controlled, and activities might be traceable and recorded. So if you can ensure the control over the IT risk and cyber risks in the same way as you are doing right now as your business, that you can apply all those technologies. Just you should be only complying with your general framework of the risk management in IT sector. So there are trends that banking are still trying to use new technologies like AI, cloud solutions, API, and so on. So we are just facilitating and hope that more and more institutions, not only in the bank side, but also in the fintech area, will use new technologies in the everyday life.
Thank you very much for that. And just the second part of the question was regarding if there is any specific requirements or standards, approval standards for the software, both the proprietary or the third party, which would be used by the fintech company regulated in Latvia. Is the company free to choose its software solutions, or are there any standards or recommendations maybe that were developed by the regulator as well?
You are free to choose your provider. There are, of course, some limitations that if you are choosing third-party provider, it should be located in European Union. If you are treated with the data of European customers, so those customers that of EU citizens should be also located in EU. For example, if you choose some Amazon or other cloud services, so we consider that. Regarding this is probably the main point. All other regulations are only regulated by one document that are mainly covers all types of the activities, but there is no specific requirements to specific providers. So you are free to use third-party services to integrate, for example, payment services or identification services or customer onboarding services or risk model. When you are going to the licensing process as a new institution, during the licensing, we will just make the check how well are you controlling all those your third-party providers. So how you're sharing the risk and how you control those risks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Marina.
Okay, so colleagues, we are almost, we're actually a little bit run of time, but I really appreciate it for this fantastic discussion today. And I want to say a huge thanks for our panelists. I think you were very, very insightful today. Thank you very much, Ivan, Martin, as the industry representatives. Thank you very much, Agnes and Sandra. I think we also have a huge notes today, and our to-do list a little bit increased after today's discussion. But I think it was very valuable, and I hope that participants who were listening to us, and just for your information, there were more than 180 people who are appreciated to this discussion. Thanks everyone for participation. And regarding the question and answer session, if some questions are not answered, we will answer them and will publish this information in our website. So thank you very much for all the participants and partners who helped us to organize this event. Have a good day.